Hey, this is going to be a quick introduction into the new granular synthesizer from Baby Audio called Grainferno. So in this video, I'm going to go into a lot of depth about all the crazy features that Grainferno has if you're not super familiar with granular synthesis or whatever. So right now you can see that we have this preset loaded up, Analog Wind Orchestra, and that we're currently in the Design tab. If you want a simpler view of the plugin, you can go right to the Play tab, and then you just have basically these 4 macros and any samples that you have loaded in. So let me play a note. Right, so as you can hear, Grainferno is really good at these lush kind of pad sounds, but let's see how you might actually go about designing your own sound from scratch. So I got back to the init preset. Again, it sounds like this. And let's actually go into what controls you might use to make your own patch. So I have my sample loaded in, and I can select different regions of the sample to generate grains from with this position slider. And I can control how fast grains are generated with this rate knob. As you could hear, when I got really high rate values, it started to create a tone by itself, and that's actually one of the main ways you'll make some more interesting sounds with Grainferno, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But for now, you have size as well, so that just controls how long grains are, how much they overlap with each other. Scan will make grains move throughout the sample as you hold down a note. And scatter will make the position in the sample randomized. Then we have some more basic controls like gain and pan. But we also have shape, which controls how grains fade in and out. And that can sound pretty subtle. We also have pitch. And then we also have the position knob down here, which controls the same thing as the position slider up here. Okay, so those are kind of your standard granular controls that you can use to just change how grains are being generated. How big they are, how fast they come, how they take from the sample. But we also have a lot of kind of post-processing for the individual grains in Grainferno. So we have this G filter, which is a per grain filter. So if I play this and move the filter, it kind of just sounds like a normal filter. So we'll probably have to take advantage of the granular modulators to actually really hear the effect of this happening per grain. So I'll link some randomness, and this is per grain randomness, link it to the cutoff of the filter. Now when I play a note, we hear that the filter is kind of randomized. Although you still can't really tell that it's specifically a granular synthesis kind of sound. So let's keep adding some randomness. I'll add it to the resonance of the filter as well, and to the pan. And just in case you're getting lost here, I am selecting this modulator from over here. There's this whole modulator section. Random 1 is one of the modulators. I can simply click and drag on the little tab to drop it on any of the knobs, and it will now modulate that knob. So I have it modulating the panning as well. Right, so now once I add some more randomness, it's really a more complex and interesting sound. And that's one of the main ways that you might use Grainferno to take your existing samples or all of the factory samples that we have in here and turn them into something a little bit more interesting. Okay, next let's look into the compression. So the granular compression is another control. And to show you this, I'm actually going to load up a different sample. So this is from the stock library. Let's see, tape Xylo. And I'll turn the compression off for now, and I'll play throughout the sample. Make sure to remove these modulators as well, left over from before. And I'll make sure to turn down the randomness on the position, the scatter, So right now that sounds really raw. It just sounds like a xylophone that was recorded, and that sounds great. But we can start to use the compression to kind of bring out some of its character. So just like a normal compressor, this will give you a more kind of normalized loudness across the sound, but this works on a per grain basis. So let's start to hear it. Okay, so now the main hit of the xylophone is not much louder than the tail or kind of the in-between noise that we have here. And we can take advantage of the kind of the granular behavior of this by having some scatter. And now even if the noise is happening at the same time as kind of the main hit of the xylophone, it's still going to be compressed upwards because this compression isn't happening after the fact, it's happening per grain. So we can take advantage of that in a lot of different ways, but for now I'm actually going to turn down the scatter. Just going to take some of the noise, which again without the compression wouldn't really be audible, but we're compressing it upwards a lot. And now we can use this noise in different ways. So we can add some scatter and have just kind of background noise for our track, maybe map some randomness to the pan as well. But actually what I really want to do here is go back to this idea of tonal grains. So I'm going to start to turn the rate up so the grains are generated so fast they actually form a tone again. And if I want a perfect octave, I'll just go to the key mapped octave mode, which I just clicked on these three little dots here to see all the different modes that this knob offers. And that's something else that I'll go into a little bit later. But now I'm at a clean octave multiple. And as you could see, it's at key mapped octave. So that actually means that when I play different notes on my keyboard, the tone that it generates based on the grain rate, right? The grain rate is happening at the tone because it's happening so fast. That's going to be matched to the key that you're playing. So now you can use this what was just like inaudible noise before. We pumped it up with the compression, and now we're generating grains over it so fast that these are becoming tones. We can go further and manipulate these tones with some of the same parameters we were using before. So like pitch, let's add an LFO to it. So again, this is in the modulation section. Click on the tab of the LFO, drag it over to the pitch, and let's LFO the pitch. So as you can hear, it's not really affecting the pitch that we're hearing because the grains are being generated so fast. Again, that's what's determining the tone that we're hearing. The pitch now is just kind of having a more timbral effect. We can also use some of the other knobs like the size, and this will also have a weird kind of effect with these tonal grains. Let's change the direction of this. And one last cool thing about the tonal grains is that we're getting this kind of oscillator based on these really small grains that we're generating, and we can change in the sample where we're generating the grains from. So let's... So we almost have a wavetable kind of effect with that. I'm actually going to focus on these tonal patches a bit more, and I'm going to go to a new sample. Right, so that's kind of a really atmospheric vocal sample. Let's first actually go to the LFO, and so I'm going to map the LFO to the pitch. Right, so now we no longer really have a tonal sound, but the LFO is still giving us some pretty cool behavior. Actually, one thing I can do with the pitch is change the scaling option. And again, that's these three dots, which I showed before. So this gives the knob a little different kind of behavior. I'm going to go to a scale. I'll go to pentatonic major. And now the knob will be snapped to the steps of that scale. And that also applies to modulations like with our LFO. But now let's go back to a tonal kind of sound. So I'll go back to -2 octaves. And let's see some other things that the LFO can do. So I'll map that actually back to pitch. And again, we get this kind of low pass filtering effect from the pitch. Oh, actually, we might not want it to be snapped anymore. Let's go to key mapped free. So let's actually start to adjust the mod of the LFO. So what this does is it multiplies the shape of the LFO upwards and then wraps it around. So listen to how the LFO sounds without the mod and then as I introduce some mod. So not really interesting, but it does get faster. But if I have a more interesting shape here, like this, we start to get a lot more interesting shapes that would be hard to hand draw. Especially this is useful for exponential kind of rhythms, and it's as easy as just doing this, moving the tension up. And those exponential rhythms will be landing perfectly on beat at the end, actually, if you have it at like a clean number of beats for the rate of the LFO. Okay, the LFO has another cool feature, which I'll go over right now, grain sync. So this syncs to the rate that grains are generated at. So now if I map this to pitch, and it already was, so that's good. Now we'll hear that since this is 2 grains for the rate, it's every other grain will be high or low in pitch. And so at low values, that has kind of a cool sequencing effect, right? We can make a more complex sequence if we change the rate down. Or map it to the scale again. But at higher rates, this will have almost a grain modulation kind of effect, where these grains are being generated so fast, but they're having this kind of very specific pattern to the parameters, and that creates a more interesting tone than what we would get otherwise. Right, so there's a lot of sound design possibilities there, and that's really in the tonal grains, getting into these grain sync LFOs and some of the different scaling options and things, you can really get a lot of interesting sounds. So let's also now look at the rate scaling options. So right now I've already introduced some of them, right? And those are just either the free one where you can go to really any octave multiple, or the octave snap one where it's a clean octave multiple. We can also go to milliseconds, so now it's no longer tied to your key, it's just a clean number of milliseconds. Or we can go to BPM sync, so the grains are generated at some rhythm on beat, right? And really these scaling options, I can't go into all of them, but these are a great way to just get a lot more out of the synth to explore these scaling options. There's a BPM sync on the scan, the scatter has a few different modes, the pitch has tons of modes, size does as well. So yeah, that's a great way to get deeper into the synth. But for now, the last thing I'll go over in this video is how you can add a second sample. So I have one sample loaded up here. I can either drag and drop a second one in, or I can just click add sample. And let's just add this one for now. So now I can see this morph slider, which is new. And I can use this to morph in between the two samples. There's actually a bunch of different ways that we can morph in between the samples. We can do a rhythm or a pattern based on some binary number. Or any of these other things like envelope followers and weave and all sorts of things. There will be more videos in the future. You can go to the Baby Audio forums and you can start to share techniques or presets or whatever to just find a community of people who are interested in synthesizers, granular synthesis, or just music production in general, and how to get the best kind of sounds out of Grainferno.